the Stephen Cooley Real Estate Show. We've got beautiful homes for sale in your area. Also visit us on the web. We have all the properties for sale in our area on our web at stephencooley.com. You also, a new feature on our website is you can go to our website and click Ask a Question, and we'll answer your question over the internet and also feature your question on this show. So please do that and stay tuned for beautiful homes for sale in your area. Hello, I'm Stephen Cooley, and welcome to the Stephen Cooley Real Estate Show. I'm very excited on today's show to have Tracy Reynolds with Tracy Reynolds Law Firm here in Rock Hill. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thank you.
Tracy's our attorney for the show and keeps us abreast of everything changing in real estate law and the processes that you go through in closing on a property. As most people know, in the state of South Carolina, an attorney is involved in the purchase of real estate. Tell us about that.
That's right. In the state of South Carolina, our Supreme Court has determined that the aspects of a closing need to be handled by someone who has a license to practice law in the state of South Carolina. So that's one thing. When you go to a closing, you will have an attorney to assist you, other than some other states may have title companies or notaries, or may even be closed in the bank office. Here in the state of South Carolina, you will have an attorney to represent you.
That is great, and there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of signatures going on at that closing table, and there's a lot of things that can be misunderstood, and Tracy is great at explaining that to the buyers and making sure they understand what they're legally obligating themselves to for 20 or 30 years.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
It is. The closing process can be overwhelming. I mean, we do it every day. We recognize that clients don't do it every day, once every 2 to 5 years maybe. So it is important that they understand the documents that they're signing. There's so much work that goes on between the time that the contract is signed until they enter into our closing room, and we try to keep them well informed throughout the entire process.
Absolutely, Tracy. And in our area or in South Carolina, they can choose between a tenancy in common and joint tenancy.
They can.
And they choose that at your office. And just real briefly, explain the difference in those two, and it's basically if you pass away, how your portion of the property, if you're buying it with more than one person is buying it, how your portion is distributed through your estate. Real quickly, tenancy in common.
Tenancy in common is where the property is equally divided between the two. So if one passes away, it goes into their estate and out via the terms of their will, or if no will, it goes via state statute, which would be half to spouse and half to children. There's other variations of that. And that's really important because most people assume that at the time that they die, that the spouse that they purchased the home with, that's been paying with them over all these years, is automatically going to get the house. And that is not the case unless you have a will that says that that would be the case, that it would go to the spouse.
Now, joint tenancy automatically goes to the other party.
Joint tenants, yes, it does. It automatically goes upon death or the filing of a death certificate at the courthouse. The property would then vest into, or would vest in the remaining owners.
Yeah, and that's very important, especially if people aren't married and they're buying a property for some reason together. If you want it, your portion, if you pass away, to go out through your estate or automatically go over to the person that you own the property with, this is the difference, the main difference, and that it can be determined at time of closing.
Right, it is, and we automatically set up joint tenants for the rights to survivorship for our closings, particularly between husband and wife. Of course, we discuss that at closing, and that's the decision that's made then, or the final decision is made then. When it's other circumstances where the parties may not be married, or if it's a mother-daughter, we specifically go over that before closing so that we can determine and educate them so that they make the correct decision.
Absolutely, and you do a great job explaining that because it is difficult to understand for a lot of people, especially if they're only buying real estate every 7 or 10 years.
Right.
So again, you do a great job with that. Laws have changed here recently to where the bank, what they put on a good faith estimate has to match the closing statements.
Right.
And in the past, if the bank kind of maybe guessed at some of these numbers, or they shifted or changed and there was no comparison, the good faith estimate that the bank gave you the day you applied for the loan and the numbers they sent in at closing, and now those have to match. So let's talk about that.
As of January 1st, the good faith estimate that at one point was just that, a good faith estimate, is now a really good faith estimate, in that the origination fees, or the fees charged by the lender, meaning origination fees or document preparation, processing fees, those fees that go directly to them, have to match exactly what was on the good faith estimate versus what they see when they walk into my closing room. And how that's important is that when they go into and meet with their lender, sometimes it's several weeks, several days before they walk into my closing room, which is where they're actually going to bring their money based on what was quoted up front. So now there's no surprises, at least as to the origination fees. There are other fees that can change up to 10%, the appraisal fee, blood determination, those fees that the lender doesn't know exactly what those are going to be. And then if I can make a recommendation that you work directly with your attorney to get exactly a quote from them as to what those fees are going to be, and work closely with your attorney's office on those particular fees.
Absolutely. And one thing I stress is once an attorney's hired, this is after you go pending to purchase a property, go under contract. Once the attorney's hired, some buyers are not speaking or seeing that attorney until that closing, but they can actually start that relationship and ask questions once the attorney's picked and you start the process. And that's important.
It is. It is very important. And it's important that you keep that relationship with your attorney throughout the process. Feel free to contact that attorney or that attorney's office to ask questions, to help lead you along the process, walk with you. There's so many safeguards in place now that where you don't have to be pulled through the closing process or gated. You can actually walk with the professionals that you've chosen and have them assist you along the way so that you make the decisions.
Excellent. That is great information. And one major thing that the attorney does in our area also is you research that title and make sure that the sellers who are selling the property are the actual ones who can pass title on. And that's a title search and then title insurance. And that's a very important part of this process, too.
It is. It's very important. And lots of times clients don't realize exactly how much time goes into that. That's the majority of really what we do. We search title for 40 years, and then based on my opinion as to the status of title, a title company that will then stand behind me as to things that I couldn't see, misrecorded documents, misindexed documents, fraud. But that is a very important part.
Absolutely.
And along the process of us searching title, if there's an encroachment or anything that is shown on a survey or throughout our title exam that we think that you need to know about, we let you know in advance of closing.
Absolutely. And through our process of closing lots of loans for people, we run into properties that an heir didn't sign 40 years ago, and that property could not pass on to the new buyer. So the job you do with researching that is very important.
It is. It is important. And you would be surprised at how many times you may not know by the time you got to closing, but we've done lots of work on our end, possibly clearing issues that may not even be brought to your attention.
Because if you buy it and you're making payments on it, you want to own it.
Right.
Tracy, great information. Thank you so much for being on the show and all your wisdom with the real estate laws over the years that you've given us, and we look forward to more in the future. Tell folks how to reach you, and I cannot recommend Tracy anymore because she does my personal closings and a lot of closings for our clients. Tell folks how to reach you, Tracy.
You can reach me via telephone at 803-328-0150, or if you want to learn more about me and what we've talked about today, my website is threynolds.com.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for being on the show. Please stay tuned for more houses for sale in your area.